I rise today, of course, to address one of the issues that's been dogging this country for years, and that's, of course, a cap on our emissions in our oil and gas industry. And a cap on emissions, of course, is a cap on production. To pretend otherwise is to be talking out of two sides of your mouth, if you will, and that is something that this government is becoming better and better at, but eventually it has to land on some real solutions here. It talks about an energy superpower, which is old words that it chose from a previous government, but recognize what that means. An energy superpower is one whose actual economy contributes to energy around the world so that we actually influence security outcomes around the world, not just the price of oil and gas, although that is part of it. We think about our supply to the world, we think about what we do for oil and gas around the world, we think about what we do for the environment around the world. All of these things are connected, but the most important thing in the unveiling world context right now, of course, is our energy supply as a strategic resource for the world as it faces a more and more conflict-based, more and more risky future. So I analyze this as far as what we're talking about getting an emissions cap canceled, which is frankly a production cap on the oil and gas industry, by design or by consequence. Now, this government has, for the past 10 years, tried to punish the most productive part of the Canadian economy. When I say productive, I mean the most value per job, the highest export value in any industry in Canada. So we've got to get back to the point where we're actually adding some value here to make sure that we actually contribute to the world. And before I proceed any further, Mr. Speaker, I want to make sure that the House understands that I'm splitting my time today with my honourable colleague from Skeena-Bulkley Valley, if you don't mind. But in order for us to contribute to the world from both a security perspective, an energy perspective, an environmental perspective, we need to make sure the world is doing better with the outcomes we have. Now, one of the consequences around the world, of course, is the economic and strategic messaging that we have in this country versus what we have to deliver to the world. The world's begging for energy. Think about how many countries in the last 5 years have said, please give us natural gas. We need LNG delivered here. And then Russia, of course, started a war in Europe that has to cause the actual disruption of the energy industry all the way across Europe and as a result around the world. Suddenly, it became obvious to many people, the United States in particular, that it could export its resources to Europe that was desperate for those resources. Who else needs those resources? Well, Mr. Speaker, everybody in the world is demanding those clean resources because you look at where the world goes for energy right now, it increasingly goes towards coal. Most people that are in Parliament don't realize this, but the consumption of coal around the world has increased significantly over the past 10 years, primarily because most developing nations want power more than they want something green. And we all know, we think we know in this House anyways, that coal is a larger emitting energy source than natural gas or than oil. So the fact that coal itself is increasing in consumption around the world is an indication that the world is going towards the energy solutions that it can find first and foremost as a result of the fact that we cannot supply our liquefied natural gas, which we have in abundance here in Canada. We're the 5th largest producer in the world. We could be much higher if we actually took advantage of the opportunities of providing this much cleaner fuel to our allies, to our friends, to the developing nations around the world that don't have that option right now. And that option will increase their standard of living, will increase their environmental outcomes. And I do beseech you, Mr. Speaker, to recognize that there is one atmosphere, that when we emit CO2 around the world, we're emitting CO2 for everybody around the world. So any type of reduction that we can benefit from here in Canada, that is the production of Canadian resources to abate emissions around the world, we should take advantage of. And we have ignored that for far too long because of prejudicial policies that have been put upon our oil and gas industry by this government for 10 years. We need to make sure those are repealed in order for us to contribute to the world, to contribute to solutions for the environment, and contribute to our economy, contribute the way we can to security as well around the world. Now, there's a lot that goes on here with liquefied natural gas. And I noted from the Prime Minister's statement of his first 5 fast tracks from his major projects office that he announced for Calgary, the city where I'm from, Mr. Speaker. He announced a major projects office, and then he announced 5 first projects that he's going to move to a fast track here. One of those projects, of course, is LNG Canada, the only liquefied natural gas export facility that's been built in Canada over the last 15 years. Why is it taking so long to do in Canada when at the same time as we built one in Canada, they built 14 in the United States, and they're exporting their natural gas around the world as a result. Higher cost, higher CO2 intensity, natural gas being distributed from the United States to allies in developing countries around the world, while we in Canada have sat on our hands because we're trying to limit our potential here and limit our contribution to the world from both an energy, environmental, and security perspective. This has to change. Of course, the first way to make that change is to undo the cap on emissions, because the cap on emissions is a cap on production. There is no other formula that equates to how you actually reduce emissions. But when we do talk about emissions, let's talk about what we've actually succeeded at in emissions in Canada. Because many organizations have looked at the emissions reductions we have in our oil and gas industry across Canada. We have a 32% reduction in the CO2 associated with our oil production, or oil sands production, over the last 16 years in Alberta. That is a significant contribution to the actual emissions reductions that we have in this country as a whole. Matter of fact, it is the largest contribution. And the tough part is they're actually measuring that in the industry. When you take a look, and I quote the Environment Commissioner here in Canada, we talk about Canada's emissions reduction. Canada's emissions reductions are largely determined by the Environment Canada, who keep changing the formula year by year, very opaquely. And the Environment Commissioner has condemned Environment Canada for that opacity in actually showing the real numbers to Canadians and how they calculate those actual reductions in CO2 emissions. Whereas the oil and gas industry in Canada knows those numbers and has done a great job in reducing the CO2 impacts associated with oil and gas production in Canada. Coal, as I said, has gone up. It's record production around the world. But let's also look at oil. What's happening in the oil markets right now? For years we've been hearing about how oil is peaked. Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you right away that this year will be another peak, and another peak, and another peak. This peak that should have happened 20 years ago, according to some of my colleagues on the other side and their actual reading of partial and prejudiced information, hasn't happened. Will be over 102 million barrels a day of production this year. And that tells you that we're going to continue to consume this around the world. Why aren't we contributing more to that? Because we've got a cap. We've got a cap on production. What's the point of exporting energy if you can't produce it? You've got to make sure you produce the energy at better environmental standards than anybody else around the world. OPEC just increased their target for production by 137,000 barrels per day, Mr. Speaker. It's a significant increase, and of course people think it's going to have an impact on the price of oil around the world. They're probably right, but the fact of the matter is they wouldn't be increasing oil production if they didn't actually see that there is demand for that oil that we don't seem to recognize in Canada. So we've got to get out of our own way here in order to make this work for the Canadians, work for the environment, and work for our partners in security around the world. It's eminently important that we get this cap off. This cap, as I said, on emissions is a cap on production. Why bother with an LNG expansion that the Prime Minister asked, or reported, when in fact you can't do that without increasing your emissions? So, cart before horse here, folks. We've got to make sure that we actually get the ability to produce and get those products to the world market that's demanding our product from Canada. Clean, dependable, safe, environmentally friendly energy to the world so we can actually develop better, develop our country, develop the environment around the world, make sure we're a security partner for all our partners around the world. Step one, we have to remove the emissions cap. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. L'honorable député de Thérèse de Blainville. Président. Et dans le fond, j'écoute ce message et je me dis, effectivement, de travailler et d'être le leader au niveau de nos énergies propres et conventionnelles est excessivement important. Alors, pourquoi perdre du temps de parler du cap alors qu'on peut parler de comment innover pour livrer effectivement ce leadership à travers le Canada avec de l'énergie conventionnelle et de l'énergie propre pour faire une différence pour nos citoyens?
Member for Calgary Centre.
Monsieur le Président, je remercie mon collègue pour la question. Et c'est intéressant parce que l'énergie propre est un terme qui est différent pour une personne à l'autre, mais pour la personne, le membre à l'autre côté, je pense que l'énergie propre, peut-être c'est l'énergie qui vient du solaire, l'énergie éolienne, mais je ne suis pas certain qu'elle est aussi propre que l'énergie qu'on a maintenant. Le gaz naturel, LNG, est une énergie propre pour le monde maintenant. C'est plus propre que tous les autres maintenant pour la production d'énergie, la production d'électricité autour du monde. C'est important, c'est nécessaire pour nous de faire un sentier pour exporter le gaz naturel pour tout le monde. Merci.
Questions, comments, questions et commentaires. Le député de la Pointe-de-l'Île.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Dans ce que dit mon collègue, je vois une contradiction parce qu'on a entendu beaucoup de gens ici dire qu'on pouvait décarboner le pétrole, qu'il va y avoir un pétrole vert ou trouver une façon de rendre le pétrole moins polluant. Mais là, on dit augmenter le plafond d'émissions, c'est de diminuer le plafond d'émissions, c'est diminuer la production. Donc, on admet que c'est pas vrai. Il n'y a pas de pétrole vert. Le pétrole va nécessairement amener une augmentation de la production de gaz à effet de serre. Et je veux savoir aussi si mon collègue est d'accord qu'il faut diminuer notre production de gaz à effet de serre si on ne veut pas continuer et provoquer de plus en plus de catastrophes climatiques. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Encore, je remercie mon collègue pour la question. Le gaz à effet de serre est un problème qu'on adresse mieux ici au Canada qu'autant pays autour du monde. C'est mieux ici que les autres pays du monde, mais c'est nécessaire de produire l'énergie pour le monde. La production d'énergie, c'est plus important que l'énergie qui vient de charbon en Asie n'est pas aussi propre que l'énergie qu'on produit ici au Canada, comme l'LNG Canada. C'est très important pour le monde pour réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Merci.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Pitt Meadows Maple Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member from Calgary for his remarks. So the fact of the matter is that the need for oil and gas is increasing worldwide. And if we don't meet those needs, we're not stepping up, then it's being taken by other countries and other producers. And I wonder if the member could just comment more about the fact that by reducing and holding back this, the production, how that negatively impacts services for Canadians, such as healthcare, such as everything, transportation, infrastructure, and how we're really shooting ourselves with this policy.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is an excellent question. I alluded to it a bit in my speech here, but the fact of the matter is we've got an industry here that this government has held back for 9 years, done their best to punish the Canadian economy by punishing the oil and gas industry. And they found out after 9 years, and it has not worked. The rest of Canada is slavishly now deeper and deeper and deeper in debt, and we have to address that as quickly as possible. They talk about crises. They talk about the crises in housing, the crises in productivity, the crises one crisis follows another. The fact of the matter is that the most productive industry that we have in Canada, that is the dollars per job, is the energy industry. And we've got to make sure that we're contributing to the world here. By contributing to the world's needs, we're contributing to ourselves as well. The energy industry provides the most taxes for Canadians' benefits of any industry across this country. That's how we're going to benefit Canadians going forward here.
Comment, a very brief question. L'honorable député de Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. On est en pleine crise climatique. Les sécheresses, les inondations, les feux de forêt se multiplient. Puis le Parti conservateur nous arrive avec une motion pour dire qu'on devrait polluer davantage. Le rapport de l'Institut climatique la semaine dernière nous disait qu'on n'atteint pas nos cibles de réduction de gaz à effet de serre à cause du secteur pétrolier et gazier. Qu'est-ce qui répond à ça?
Now, member for Calgary Centre, a brief response.
Merci. Je ne connais pas le rapport pour qu'il il réfère, mais je suis certain que le gaz à effet de serre qui vient de la gaz naturel canadien est bien plus propre que le charbon qui est brûlé en Chine maintenant, en Asie, en le reste en Asie, qui s'agrandit beaucoup maintenant. C'est très important d'exporter le gaz naturel du Canada autour du monde. Merci beaucoup.
Resuming debate, please, to debate the honourable member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.